Hi, and welcome to my channel, Busy Beat Natural Remedies. I'm Karissa, and today I thought I'd talk about intuition. What is it? How can you use it? How do we use it to help teach our kids? So for me, because our family's God-centered family, what I consider my intuition is, guidance from above. So guidance from God, guidance from my guardian angels, guidance from my higher self. And this is what I teach my children. I understand that a lot of people will go, no, I don't get it. We can talk to God, but He doesn't want to talk back to us, and it's just a gut feeling that I get. Well, do you ever wonder why you get a gut feeling? Do you ever wonder why the hair on your arms and stuff stand up when maybe something isn't right? Or when something is completely right and you're in tune, you also get goosebumps and you get the hairs on your arms and stuff stand up. Well, some believe that the hair is actually kind of like our antennas to communicate with our higher self, God, angels, whatever you want to call them. And that's actually why, when you look back in ancient times, you see a lot of ancient cultures, they didn't cut their hair. Men, the women, they all kept their hair long, because there is the belief in some cultures, and a lot of cultures actually, especially ancient ones, that our hair is actually our spiritual antenna, if that's what you want to call it. Why is this important? In this world today, it is extremely challenging, right? We have a lot going on. We have a lot of negativity out there. And we're not going to be with our kids 24/7. We need them to be able to fend for themselves, make good decisions for themselves, without us always being over their shoulders saying that decision may not end well for you. You may want to think this thing all the way through. And so what I'm trying to teach my children is, one, talk to God. And if you want to test this, you certainly can. I believe that when I talk to God, if I truly listen, He will respond back to me. Now, is it His voice in my head telling me the answer? No, it's my own voice in my head, and it's giving me an answer. And I've actually tested this before, or did this. Side note, the person who taught me this, her name is Jennifer Falah. She is, if you want to call her the guru in this area on how you can connect to God's source, your higher self. She's amazing. She's the one that taught me and made me realize that this is even a thing. So you can find her on Rumble or YouTube, and her name again is Jennifer Falah. If you want to learn more about this and go into the deeper dives of our spiritual connection with God and the angels and pretty much all of heaven, definitely recommend checking her out and following her. But back to my first experience. I was having a sinus issue, and this is when I just started out with the holistic way of taking care of myself and my family. And I didn't want to jump to the typical over-the-counter medications when I was having sinus pressure. I wanted to find other things to use to help alleviate that pressure. And so I just decided, I'm going to try it. I'm going to ask God, what is a natural herb that I can use that would help to alleviate sinus pressure, stuffy noses and stuff. And I kid you not, I did it right before I went to bed, and all I heard was peppermint. And I was like, okay, well, it was late, so I didn't check it right away. But then I went on to the computer the next day, or my phone the next day, and I looked up, what are the benefits of peppermint? And I kid you not, one of those things was it helps to alleviate stuffy noses. It helps to open up your nasal passages. And a lot of times people will just put it on their wrist, and if you can smell it, and it'll help to start to break up and clear your air passages. Now, obviously, if you have a really bad sinus infection, it's going to take a little more than that. But that was my very first time that I ever prayed to God, spoke to God, and was trying to look to see if I could actually hear Him respond back to me. And I apologize if you hear any noise in the background. That is Bear. He's in my office with me right now. That was the first time, and I was just blown away. And you could try this. Ask a question that you don't know the answer to, okay? And then, especially I hate to say Google it, go look it up on the internet afterwards and see if what you heard in your head is the answer. And watch how many times you actually hear the answer. What it also has done for me is it has helped me to become a more confident parent. Because when my kids ask me questions, and if I don't know really what the answer is, it's, sometimes my kids ask some pretty deep questions. I just turn to God and I say, God, Jesus, this is their question, how should I explain this to them? I kid you not, I hear solutions and ways to explain things to my children in ways I never thought of, and in ways that are appropriate for their age. So I don't sugarcoat things for my kids. My kids know that there are things going on in this world, and I have young kids. I don't have older kids that, it's easy to explain to them. But when it comes to explaining those things, I don't sugarcoat it for them, but I've been able to find a way to explain these things, what's going on in the world to them, without scaring them, without causing them to feel hatred towards whatever's going on. I don't want my kids to be filled with fear or hatred, because it seems like we live in a world today that is just full of that, right? And I am praying, and I believe that God is moving His hand over this world to change that. I believe that this generation of parents and the children that we are raising, they're going to be the generation that's going to start to show change in a positive way. And I think a lot of that has to do with teaching them and showing them how to connect to their Creator, to God, spiritually. So they understand that what we are spiritual beings having a biological experience. In my family, we believe that when we die, our soul never dies. It goes back to heaven, and then you will go on another journey at some other time to learn another lesson in some other dimension. Again, that's going to be between you and God and your angels above to determine, do you come back to earth for another lesson? And my family believes that when you die, your soul goes back up to heaven, you review your life, you learn lessons, and, I've heard that earth is the most difficult school for spiritual learning there is, and that's why some people come back to repeat it. Now, I understand that we're heading towards the reincarnation, but if you don't believe me, what about those stories where you have these young kids who are like 2 or 3 years old talking about situations that they experienced as if they were like a World War II veteran that was shot down in an airplane, and parents have been able to go and find that exact person and see that exactly what their child said happened to them actually happened to them. You can look these stories up. What that is most likely is that person's soul did not finish what we like to say their soul contract down here on earth. So they had to come back, and they're having to fulfill that contract. I also believe that, when someone commits suicide, their soul does not go to hell. What people call purgatory, is there such a place as purgatory? I believe so, but it's just more of a state of confusion in the soul realm. They're just so confused. No, they don't go to hell. They come back up, they go to heaven, and they review their life with Jesus, and it's not a life of, we're judging you. I don't believe that my God is like that at all. He's our Father. He loves us as children. He understands we make mistakes, and He's just there to review our life so that we can sit there and make a determination like, I could have handled that situation better, or I could have done it this way. And then at that time, I believe that our soul, along with our angels and stuff and God, that we turn around and decide, do we want to go back to earth and incarnate and still learn so that we can grow spiritually? I think that earth is very challenging for many of us to grow spiritually. I mean, look around you. We are constantly being beaten with negativity, and we're not good enough, and God is a vengeful God, and if you do this wrong or do that wrong, you're going to hell. And we're constantly being basically told that we are separated from God. And that's not what I believe at all. I believe that we are actually one with God. I believe that God puts a piece of Him in each one of our souls, and He's here experiencing everything we're experiencing. Because what better than the Creator of all things, who knows everything, than to go and experience the different experiences that He ever could experience. Intuition and understanding it and connecting with it and learning to grow with it and use it is very important, because it helps you become a more confident person, a more confident soul. To be honest, I probably started my spiritual journey, I'm going to say back in 2020. It's probably when it first hit me. And I have been growing as a soul, I'd like to think exponentially, since then. And because of that, I feel a very strong connection to God. I don't fear, everything that's going on in the world today, even with what's going on with Iran and Israel, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, World War III. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Because my intuition says no. That's not going to happen. Because like I said, I believe God is moving His hand over this earth to create an earth of peace, no longer wars. And if I hadn't had the connection, if I hadn't learned to listen to my intuition, I'd probably still be living in fear like most people do. But as I've taught my children fear, what does it really mean? False evidence appearing real. How many times has someone told you something horrible is going to happen, and they made you all scared and everything, and then it actually never happened? I'm going to say like 9 times out of 10 in my life, I was told something horrible is going to happen, or this is going to happen, and it made me scared, and then it didn't happen. But yet, I sat there and stressed myself out. I lived in fear, thinking it was and it could, and it never did. And look at all the precious time I wasted and raising my blood pressure and living in fear. So I teach my children, don't live in fear. Whenever you hear fear mongering, or you hear something that someone says, oh, this is going to happen, blah, blah, take a step back and go, probably not. And then again, tap into your intuition. Ask God. He'll tell you right away. And if when you practice listening to your intuition, you will start to hear messages clearer and clearer. Is it 100% all the time? No. Nope. Unfortunately, we have human filters, and our own desires and opinions sometimes get in the way of the message. If you're really, really, really tied to something, like if you want something so, so bad, and then you ask God, am I going to get this thing? You're probably going to hear yes, because you're so tied to it. Should God give you any other response, you won't hear it, because your ego will block it. And that is actually what here on this earth kind of makes the challenge for our soul. We have our ego, which, when you hear about ego, it's never usually a positive thing. It's always usually equated to negative. And that's because that's the earth realm, the personality that's trying to keep you tied to you're nothing more than a biological being, when in fact we are so much more than a biological being. And I teach this to my children. And I kid you not, by teaching my children, one, not to live in fear, two, to listen to your intuition, pray to God, and then listen for His guidance. They have come to me with things that they have asked God the question on, and then they went and checked it out, and it is exactly what God said. I'll give you an example of another time that I listened to my intuition. My daughter, she was probably about 6. She had really thin flip-flops on, and she was playing on an old rickety playset, and there was a nail sticking up in that playset, and that nail went right through her flip-flops and went right in between her toes and pierced her skin. Okay, natural reaction for a mom would be, oh my gosh, because it was bleeding profusely. And then the other thought was, oh my gosh, tetanus, right? That's the first things that would start running through your mind. But I calmly, she didn't cry that much, calmly with a friend of mine, we cleaned it up, we took a look at it. I said, well, I got to take her to the doctor just to make sure there's no concern. And I just asked God, I said, God, how's this going to turn out? And He said, the doctor's going to look at you and say, everything looks good. Well, she got a little bit of a pierce, but I see no issues. She will just put a little packing on it so that it doesn't bleed. She should be fine in a few days. And I kid you not, what I heard in my head that the doctor was going to say is almost exactly what the doctor said to me. And my daughter was so happy because she's like, Mommy, what's going to happen? Because she hates going to the doctor, because she's always thinking she's going to get shots, which is really weird because we don't do shots. So I don't know why she has this fear of shots, but she does. And again, I told her, false evidence proving real, you're thinking you're going to get one, and it never happens. And then she's like, oh, yeah. But anyway, after the story, she asked me, Mommy, what's going to happen? Are they going to give me a shot? And I said, no. I just heard God say, the doctor say everything's going to be fine. They're just going to clean you up. They're going to pack it a little bit so that it can heal quickly. And they're going to send us on our way. And when they did exactly that, she said, Mommy, God told you exactly what was going to happen. I said, yes, He did. Right there is a perfect example of not letting fear overwhelm your thoughts. Take a deep breath. Listen to your intuition. Don't be afraid to ask God a question. And then listen. Because He will answer you. Sometimes it's not the answer you want to hear. And then sometimes maybe He doesn't answer you because He doesn't want to give you the answer. It's something you have to learn. So I've also learned that as well. I'm not always going to get an answer. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I didn't hear it this time. But then I kid you not, within days of me asking that question, I see the path I walked and the lesson I learned. And that was my answer. I try to teach people how to live holistically, and I'm very much of the mindset, if God did not create it, we probably shouldn't be putting it in our bodies or on our bodies or around our bodies. That's why it's so important to me that I try to make sure that I stay connected with God, because how can I help others and teach them without staying connected with God and listening to how He'd want me to teach and what He'd want me to teach? And that's exactly what I've done over the last 5 or 6 years, is I've listened to God. And, sometimes I pray before my videos and I say, what should I tell people today? What's going to make an impact in someone's life? If I can change just one person's life a day, that's amazing. How many of us live our entire life and we don't do that? And that's unfortunately because a lot of times, by no fault of our own, we become very self-absorbed just because of the society we live in. And that's not what I want to do. I want to teach my kids to live by faith, trust in God, talk to God, listen to your intuition, so that when times come when you're not sure what to do or what to say, just go within and ask, and God will tell you. God will show you one way or another on what to say and how to handle situations. And you honestly become a happier person because of it, and because you're just so much more confident. But that's why I think it's extremely important that we not only learn about intuition ourselves and learn how to connect to our Creator, to Source, and learn how to listen to that intuition and use that intuition. I think it's extremely important to teach our children at a very young age how to also tap into their own intuition and help them understand that we are spiritual beings having biological experiences, that what we do here helps us grow or sometimes stay confined. As far as I'm concerned, I want my spirit to grow so that when I am done with this life, when I go back up to heaven, I personally don't want to come back. I would like to move on to the next lesson, to the next school, for my soul. Now, does that mean that's going to happen? No. For all I know, God might say, you did such a great job, I want you to go back. And, at that time, I'll work it out with God. But, don't ignore that inner voice. Don't ignore that gut feeling. And don't think for 1 second that when you pray to God, He doesn't talk back to you. Don't think for 1 second that when you hear your own voice in your head answering your questions, that it's just you being crazy. Because it's more than likely God or Jesus or whoever your creator is helping you out, trying to help resolve your issue or your question. If you like this content and want to hear more, tap that subscribe button, hit that like button, and for more tips and tricks on how to keep your family happy and healthy the holistic way, follow me for more at benaturalremedies.com.